So welcome to this evening's event. Very excited. I love our one events. I love to listen to the noise of a group of women chattering away, sharing stories, sharing themes. It's really inspirational to talk to you all. Anybody got the light switch? Oh, yay! Thank you. Okay. So should I do that again, Amy? So welcome to the event. Before I get into lots of the intros, I'd like to introduce you to Kathryn. And Kathryn's looking at me really reluctantly, but Kathryn, come and join me on the stage up here. So you may have known from all of the stuff we've done on social media that one has grown enormously since we founded it 6 years ago, to the point now where we need somebody to run it on a day-to-day basis, and Kathryn is our program development manager. So first I'd like to introduce Kathryn, so everybody knows her, and Kathryn's going to just take us through some...
Yeah, I've got some exciting things to go through this evening. So just before we begin, a quick health and safety briefing. Just to let you all know as well, obviously we are recording the event this evening. If you've got any issues with that, then just let one of us know and perhaps stay out of the vision of the camera. But enjoy the evening. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Kathryn. She'll be doing this next time. So on the filming bit, the reason why we film it is because we have a lot of following that is outside London, and some of it now which is international. So this makes what we're doing this evening and what we're getting from our guest speaker, Kathryn, who I'll introduce in a minute, accessible to everybody. So that's our reason for filming. So our session is around career mapping, which you obviously all know because you signed up. For those of you who don't know me, I'd never introduce myself. I just talk as like everybody knows me. It's fine. But my name's Holly Monks. I'm the co-founder of the Women's Utilities Network. There are a lot of things. I'll try and do these things at the start because you're all excited at the end and want to go and have a drink and networking and chat about all the amazing stuff you've heard. You don't listen to any of this bit at the end. So we put it at the front. So that's gone. We've got a whole load of events coming up in the next few months. Please do go to the website. So I Am Remarkable, for those of you who have participated. I know speaking to some of you this evening, you've been to an I Am Remarkable, you've got value out of it. The next one we've got is booked, but we keep putting new dates on, so do look out for the I Am Remarkable. In November, we've got a big event around net zero and how we get there. Again, hosted in London by CMS, so please do go and sign up for that as well. And you'll find us out at lots of other events. So we get invited to lots of events across water and energy. So if you see us there, we're generally wearing our one colours or Tiffany colours, as I was told earlier today. So you'll spot us, so do come and say hello. And after this year's very successful inaugural Women in Utilities Awards, we've actually set a date for next year as well, so 27th of June next year. So that's what's coming up. Podcast themes, there's loads and loads of podcasts now. I think we've lost count. 57, Helen's telling me, podcasts. Some amazing stories from majority of you across our network. So whether that's career mapping, whether that's return to work, whether that's menopause, whether that's parenting, all sorts of amazing stories. And we're recording them constantly. So if you've got a great story or you've got somebody who's got a great story and you want to get involved, then please drop Helen a note at the Women's Network and we can make you famous through a one podcast. And obviously our mentoring program, which is pretty going to be key. Some of the things out of tonight's theme. I know, again, speaking to a few this evening, you are either mentors or are doing mentoring, whether that's in a formal or informal capacity. And that's a really important thing for one, because we recognise that having somebody to talk to through your career and to sense check and to get guidance support is really important. So if you're not a mentor but interested in giving back, and let me say to all of you of all ages, everybody can give something. You don't have to wait until you're my age to be a mentor. You can do it much younger on as well. Oh my God, I'm not touching anything anymore. So yeah, don't forget to join the network. So sign up online, it is free. And then you will get the newsletter. So you'll get to find out about all these events quickly, so you can sign up for them as well, especially with the I'm Remarkable, because they sell out, we don't sell anything. The tickets go really quickly. So, on to today's event. I'm not going to read out Kathryn's bio on here, you can talk to it, but the reason why I'm up here and I wanted to introduce Kathryn, because I actually participated in the Women Transforming Leadership programme that Kathryn runs at Oxford University's Saïd Business School. And it had quite a profound impact on me in a number of ways in terms of how I looked at my career, how I thought about spending time on myself in terms of planning, and actually not being a passenger, being more of an activist in what I was doing. And so when we were talking about doing career mapping, I wanted Kathryn to be here to give you a little taster of some of the amazing stuff that she's done and the amazing women she's helped throughout her career and that programme. Because even if you could take a little percentage away, I know it's going to be truly amazing. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Kathryn, who's going to take you through the next hour. Kathryn.
May I say right at the outset what an absolute pleasure it is to be in this room with such energy. Thank you all for coming from far and wide. I want to start by asking you a rhetorical question, and it's this. When you were 14 or 12 or 10, did you know exactly what you wanted to be? I have to tell you that I did. I was pretty certain what I was going to be, and I was pretty certain how I was going to get there as well. Just basically going to go straight there. Yeah, exactly. What actually happened was something that looked much more like this. The winds of change and economic recession and geographical change blew me to a completely different place off the course that I had set for myself, and I found myself doing some completely different things. That's true for me, maybe it's true for you, and it's that kind of thing that I want to use as an introduction to our session together this evening, the idea of mapping. Because my proposition to you is that navigational skills, the ability to shape and set direction in our careers, are very important for all of us, for men and women, but also particularly perhaps for women, for a number of reasons. And we'll talk a bit more about that in a second. So that's my introduction. I went somewhere completely different. Now, we are going to spend a certain amount of time this afternoon together looking backwards. Not something we necessarily do in a structured way. And we have a very good reason for doing that, because most of us bring with us a whole collection of experiences and skills and triumphs and tragedies and difficult moments that we've experienced, kind of dragging them behind us, as this picture shows. But what we're really interested in is what's next? Where am I going? What's in the future? And that's the focus of both much of the conversation we'll have with me up here on this platform, but also I am going to get you to do a bit of an exercise, just individually, together. It won't be painful, there's no Lego involved. But I'm hoping that you will, as a consequence, find that you're coming away from our time together with something useful that you can use. More of that in a minute. So my focus, the question I've asked myself at many different points in my career is, what's next? Where am I going to go? What am I going to do next? And you will all be familiar with this Alice in Wonderland quotation. Which way should I go? Well, that depends on where you want to get to. And that's one of those strategic questions that's really easy to ask, but really hard to answer. And actually the answer changes, I would suggest, at different stages of our life. So when I was faced with those questions, multiple times in my working life, I scrabbled around to find some answers, to find something that would help me answer that all-important question. and I found 2 sources of stuff to help me. And the first of them was research particularly about women's working lives. And I'm just going to distill for you some findings from a very big Oxford survey of a whole collection of global CEOs, of whom a portion were women. I have to say a small portion, but nonetheless an interesting and varied sample. When you ask senior women leaders to talk about their working lives, typically 3 themes emerge. The theme of self-acceptance, the theme of self-development, and the theme of self-management. And I'm just going to unpack each of those a little bit because they are relevant to us all. There are ways of helping us answer that all-important question, what's next? And actually also they're relevant to your own network development program, which you're going to hear more about later on. So let's unpack each of those. First of all, this notion of self-acceptance. This is the idea that we get to a stage in our lives where we accept ourselves with all our strengths and with all our limitations as essentially leaders. We're prepared to make progress, to make the trade-offs that often requires. The research describes it this way. Processes by which women leaders, female CEOs, those of us in the room, come to recognize and accept their own leadership potential, and as a consequence, cope with what that means for us and for our working lives. Now, interestingly, there is some anecdotal data that these moments of self-acceptance happen at different stages in our lives. It's not perfect data, but there is some evidence that for men, often the moment of self-acceptance will come in their teens. Often, not always, but often through a sporting context when they might be appointed captain of the football team or whatever it may be, and they start to kind of get used to the notion of themselves as a leader. Often, not always, for women, the moment of self-acceptance may come later, in their early 20s, perhaps at work, when they're promoted to their first supervisory position. Sometimes it doesn't come until much later. One of the questions you might want to ask yourself, and indeed I'm going to offer some frameworks to help you answer this question, is, when's the moment of self-acceptance for you? Has it happened? Is it happening now? Is it just about to happen? Because that idea is a particularly powerful moment, and it fuels much of what we want to go on to do. The second theme that emerges is this idea of self-development. And that's pretty obvious, particularly to you, because you have travelled here this evening, some from quite a long way away. Here, this is about self-development that supports you both tactically in your current job right now, but also the development that you might choose to do for the long game, for the next job, and maybe the one after that. There's something also about the proactivity of this theme. The idea here is that this is not a self-development conversation that I have once a year when I'm having my performance appraisal and somebody says, it's time for you to do your personal development plan. Those things are useful, but the proposition here is that I should always be thinking about the opportunities for self-development, for formal courses, for wide reading, for networking of the kind we were just doing, for sitting and working with someone, for connecting with someone outside my organization or indeed outside my industry. Those are all opportunities for self-development, and seizing them, valuing them, and being proactive is a key part of what helps us fuel a successful career. And then the third theme that emerges is this idea of self-management. And this applies both on the macro level as well as the micro level. So under this heading, we might put things like developing my negotiation skills or my ability to influence, the ability to choose, to manage myself to be as effective as possible in the particular interaction that I'm having this afternoon. But it also is about the macro level, the setting direction, the shaping of my career, generating that sense that I own it, that it is mine to own and I have agency in managing it. And that too is very important and powerful if you can achieve it. And one of the things I want to offer you is some ways that you might choose to go about doing that. So those are the three kinds of themes that emerge when women talk about their working lives. I'm well aware there are some men in the room. Some of those themes may also be kind of resonate with you. So let me take a quick straw poll then. Those are not sequential. I have presented them one after the other. It's not that one happens before the other. It's not that one is more important than the other. So let me ask you which one resonates most with you right now. And this is one of those questions where there is no right answer. So if the theme of self-acceptance is something that kind of resonates with you, feels useful and important, put your hand up, if you will. Okay, fabulous, right? Now, how about self-development? If that's the one, okay, right, good, right, okay. And how about self-management, the idea of self-management? Interesting. Okay, so they're all close, but slightly more interest in the idea of self-acceptance. Interesting. This is also one of those questions I ask, and I have no idea what the answer is going to be. It's always interesting to inquire. So, having looked to see what research had to offer me to help me answer these questions about what next, I then had a light bulb moment about 12 years ago. I was in a lecture theatre at the Saïd Business School working with an absolutely brilliant colleague of mine who's a strategy professor. And he was working with a global gas business, talking to the board and senior leaders about their strategy. And he had a whole load of diagrams and Porter's 5 forces and market analysis and competitor frameworks and so forth. And at one point, he just stopped. And he turned to the board, all those people in the room, and he said, by the way, he said, do you have a strategy for you? Because if you don't, you should. And then he got back to the material he was supposed to be presenting. I was sitting in the back, and for me, that was an absolute light bulb moment. I thought, all those strategy frameworks that we teach at business schools, that organizations like yours use on the organization, you can use on yourself as if you were an organization. And I was so entranced with this idea, with the proposition that those same approaches might work for you as an individual, that I spent the last decade rummaging through as many strategy frameworks as I could find to see if they work. And I have found a good number that do, and I'm going to give you an overview. Now, I'm going to present them as strategy frameworks that are particularly relevant for women this evening. But actually, they work for any and all genders. I know that because I teach this material in a whole variety of different places. So these are strategy frameworks that you can use on yourself wherever you are, whatever your gender. However, the reason I'm particularly interested in women's working lives is that our lives are often blown off course because we have multiple psychosocial roles that we play in life as wife, parent, partner, spouse, child, carer, community worker. And the range of those roles, I think, imposes pressure on us and on our working lives and can sometimes make it hard to find work that fits. And that's why these navigation skills, I think, are particularly relevant for women, although they are absolutely relevant for everybody. So this is what I have to offer you for this evening. I'm going to give you an overview of these models, and then I'm going to get you to try one yourself and see if it works. Now, it's not such a weird idea as you might think, because strategy models are about helping organizations navigate through uncertain and changing markets. They are about organizing to implement strategy, and that's true for us. We can all organize our lives to support our success at work, whatever we conceive it to be. And strategy increasingly these days is focused around purpose. And that too is something that if you can uncover your own sense of purpose, not easy to do, as I'll say in a minute, but worth doing, that is also a great navigational tool. So that's my proposition that I'm hoping to convince you that strategy is worth applying on ourselves. And I poured everything I've learned from teaching this material over the last 12 years into a book. And your colleagues, very kindly, are going to give you a copy of this book. So my opportunity now is to give you an overview of it, particularly to help you decide whether there are specific chapters that might be more use for you than others. I know you are all very busy. Who has time to read a whole book from the beginning to the end? So what I want to try to do is to give you a kind of a table of contents, an index to it, to help you see which bits might work for you. Now, when we talk about strategy, those of you who work in organizational strategy, you'll know that we're basically talking about 3 questions, 3 stages. And we always start with the present. Where am I now? What's going on right now, both inside the organization and outside? And then that all-important question, and where do you want to get to? So easy to ask and so hard to answer. And the answer changes throughout our lives. And then finally, the idea of taking action. All right, if that's where you want to get to, how specifically are you going to manage that? Over what time scale? With what help? And so forth. So in the book, I have found 9 strategy models which particularly work well to help you with those 3 stages of strategy. Now, those of you who are paying attention will notice that on this slide there are only 8 models. And that's because there is a 9th model, and that's in the introduction, and you'll have to read that for yourself. So what I'm just going to do very briefly is say 1 sentence about each of these models, specifically so that you can see whether there's something that might be useful for you right now at whatever stage in your life you are. So the first model focuses on where you are now, the present stage. And in fact, this is the one we're going to play with this afternoon. If I can get it to do it. There we go. The first model asks you to look back. Remember that slide with the photograph of him dragging the road behind him? This model gives you the opportunity to look back at that road and really ask yourself, what have I done? What have I learned? What am I good at? What have I experienced already and coped with? The second model is a kind of the kind of thing that a board would receive about organizational activity, a kind of dashboard of where are you spending your time at the moment, what's your energy level like, are you clear about the 2 or 3 things you're supposed to be doing, not the 22 or 23 things. It's an opportunity to really to think about yourself as if you were the board of the organization of you. The second set of models is about trying to get an answer to that all-important question, where do I want to be? And I have to confess to you that this model, the one that is circled here, is not really a traditional strategy model, but I had to include it because it's really useful. It's a simplified version of the Japanese philosophy of Ikigai, which basically asks you 4 questions. What are you good at? What do you love? What does the world need? And what can you get paid for? If you need still to get paid, and most of us do because we have to pay the rent. The central idea is that if you can find a job that is in the intersection of all 4, in other words, you love it, you're good at it, the world needs it, and you can get paid for it, then your life is going to be very happy at work. And so that is one definition of an aim you might choose. But it's not the only one. Because the challenge for all of us is to construct a life in which there is something in all four of those, not necessarily the same thing. And over time, the balance between those things might change. So you might have a job that you're good at and it pays, but it isn't really the thing you love because you've got a side hustle that is monetizing a hobby or some creative activity. The proposition here is construct your life as a portfolio of activities. That's what organizations do. In this section, then, there is an exercise which I'm not going to go into tonight, which is about helping you to uncover your sense of purpose. This is really hard. If you can do it, it's really worth it. And I use the word uncover because my proposition is that actually it's kind of still in there already. It's in you already. You're not making it up. You're kind of uncovering it, revealing it in yourself. And then once you have found your sense of purpose, the challenge for all of us is to organize our complicated and messy lives around that sense of purpose. And this is a corporate strategy model that is essentially about alignment. Organizations allocate their resources, set up their remuneration schemes in order to foster the delivery of purpose. That's true for them. We can do the same thing too. And then finally, there is the question of, okay, so this self-development theme, so what shall I actually develop? And I spoke to a group of you just in the networking session who've got your PDP conversation. There you are, your PDP conversations coming up. This is the chapter that might be some use to you. I hope so, anyway. And then finally, if you've answered those two questions, where am I now, what have I got to work with, where do I want to get to, then there's the so what. So how are you going to do this? And this chapter offers you a model about making a transition. And it sets out 3 possible strategies of moving from where you are now to where you want to get to. I could say more, but then you wouldn't have to read the chapter. And then finally, the last model is about action. How are you going to set yourself up to make this transition that you have defined? Is it just about a career plan? Probably not in our complex world. It's also a bit about experimentation. It's about taking some chances. How are you blending the straightforward action planning with the sort of slightly random opportunities that come along? And that final section is giving you a way to blend the rigorous planning and the opportunistic emergent strategy that many organizations engage in these complex times. So those are 8 of the 9 models, and I'm hoping that at least one of them might appeal to you. But before we do an exercise, let me stop and see if there are any questions, if anybody would like to argue with my central proposition. Anyone is not convinced yet? I'm very happy if that's the case. Comments, questions, anything anyone would like to say? Anything? Yes, excellent.
How often would you then kind of readjust and see, are you on the right track? Am I still moving in the right direction? Readjust your strategy?
Brilliant question. Absolutely brilliant question. We all know that our lives change and go through different phases, particularly as women, when we are single with no children, when we have small children, when we are perhaps sandwiched between the care of children and elderly parents. Life goes through different phases. And the answer to your question is that this stuff is worth redoing. It's worth getting good at strategizing for yourself. Because exactly as organizations need to review and refresh their strategy, so we do too. It may be that you don't need to go right back to the beginning and do all 8. Maybe there's one that will really help you. But for example, the sense of purpose one. People sometimes think that my purpose has to be for all time. This is me for the whole of my life. Actually, it changes. It doesn't radically change, but it does shift as we go through different phases. So that one is also worth redoing. Great question. Yes, another one. Thank you.
For the sake of simplicity, is there a combination of 1 or 2 or 3 that you'd recommend, depending on whether you are at the stage of self-acceptance, self-development, or self-management?
Another great question. And the answer, I'm afraid, is it's up to you to make your own map. It's up to you to make your own recipe. One of the reasons I went through all 8 of them was to give you a sense of, and I'm hoping you're thinking, yeah, I'm not that bothered about number 4, but number 5 sounds as if it might be just what I need. So the book is written, as I say, so that you can pick it up. Read the introductory chapter, but then pick it up wherever you want to, whatever appeals to you, because it's the thinking that matters. It really doesn't matter which model you're doing. It's the thinking that matters. Good question. Anything else? I'd love to hear a comment. Are you buying it? Oh, I'm getting some nodding. Okay, good. Excellent. Anybody want to argue? That's always fun. Yes.
Just a thought. I wondered if there might be a 4th category. Change levers, seizing the day. There's many things that happen around you that you can seize the opportunity for career mapping.
Brilliant. If you read the introductory chapter, you will discover that the 9th model is a 3-cornered strategy model, one corner of which is about opportunity. It's about balancing the plan and the emergent strategy. It's about the sudden thing that happens for good or ill and responding to it. So brilliant. That was a fabulous cue into that one. So it's in the introduction. Other things? If not, I'm going to get you to put you to work. Okay? I'm getting some nodding from the back, so fair enough. Are you all right? Okay. So what I want to do is to get you to do the first of these exercises. Now, let me emphasize, when you are thinking about your strategy, you do not have to go through all 8 of these. You do not have to do them in order. We're going to start with this one tonight because it's about the right sort of time and level of difficulty. It will give you insight for relatively low levels of effort, to be honest. At least I hope so, as you'll see. Let me explain. So what we're using here is the idea of an organizational journey. Many of us in organizations hear the word journey all the time. And a colleague of mine at Oxford did his PhD thesis on different organizational journeys and the different stages that they go through. And once again, the output of his research was that there is no perfect journey. Every organization's journey is different. There are, again, some common themes that emerge, but actually the timescale and the blending of different stages is unique to everyone. That's true for organizations, and it's true for all of us. So right at the outset, let me liberate you from the notion that there has to be one particular way of doing this properly. I'm going to show you an example journey map, just to show you how to do it, but you can play with it. It doesn't have to look like this. Now, if you have a notebook, you might want to do it in your notebook, but under your seat, you will find a worksheet and a pen, which would give you the opportunity to play along with this. But let me explain what we're going to do, first of all, okay? I'll let you pick it all up. Right, ready? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to get you to do is to think about what success means to you, because that's what that vertical axis is. What's your definition of success? Women I have worked with, men I have worked with, have a whole collection of definitions. Sometimes it's the traditional promotion. Sometimes it's about doing a job that really feels meaningful. Sometimes it's about financial security. Sometimes it's about having a balance in their life between work and home life. So think about what success means to you. You don't have to agonize about it, but, just use your instinct. And you can always redo this exercise with a different definition. So the second thing you're going to do is look back at the things that have happened to you, the particular crucible moments, if you like, both good and bad. Things that have happened to you along the way, promotions, taking on a new job which was a disaster, being made redundant, going on a fabulous course that changed the direction of your future, and plot those moments on the worksheet along, showing how successful you felt at that point. So the horizontal axis is time and the vertical axis is success. So you do the moments first. And then you draw the line that links them. And sometimes when you do that, you find that there is another moment that you've missed, that you've forgotten. This one here was not in your original list. That's very normal. And when you've done that, you might choose to think about what was going on at those stages. Something disastrous happened to you, and yet you recovered and coped. How did you cope? What did you learn? How did you get out of that slough of despond? When you were feeling really successful, top of your game, everything was going well, what was going on around you? What were the characteristics of that fabulous time in your life? Because frankly, you might want to try to reproduce them. So it's worth looking back and thinking about those high moments as well as the low moments. If you like, learning from success and failure at the same time. But then it's also worth crudely and simply thinking about the different phases that your life has been through. Maybe the first one was your first job, getting to grips with what work means. Maybe the second one was your first team leadership role, supervising 2 or 3 other people. Maybe there was a phase when the company you worked for made a load of redundancies and you were out of work for a bit. Whatever the phase is. One of the reasons for doing that is to remind us that our life does go through different phases. And one version of the question we want to ask ourselves is, and what's my next phase? What's next for me? So this is really an exercise that is looking back in order to help you look forward. Sometimes when people do this exercise, they find that they have skills and capabilities which are not on their CVs. They realize that they have done things and coped with things which they were not necessarily conscious of. And so sometimes people literally go and rewrite their CV as a consequence of doing this exercise. Now, it doesn't have to look like that. You can redo the exercise, maybe on the same sheet of paper, maybe on a different one, by changing the definition of success. So if you have, for example, used promotion as your definition of success, the success that the world sees, you could try using the definition of meaningful work, meaningful contribution. And if you do that, you might find that the line you draw looks very different, that actually the pattern is really quite different. And that too is very helpful because the differences in those 2 lines are also instructive. I worked with one woman, a very successful academic from South America, and she did this exercise twice, one for her work and one for her private life. And she discovered that one of the reasons she did not feel herself to be a successful academic who had won awards and research grants was that at every moment when something really good at work happened, something really bad at home happened. And she had found herself in those moments of success having to cope with both. So as a consequence, she felt she was really not a very successful academic at all. And yet when she looked at the journey map and saw why she felt that way, it helped to shift her view of herself. So that's an example of the kind of insight that you might get by doing this activity, not just once, but twice. Does that make sense? Right. I'm going to suggest then that, if you I'm happy to take questions about that you have a go individually. I'm going to give you 10 minutes to do that. Those of you who are extroverts will find it very hard not to talk during that process. That's fine, but you might be sitting next to an introvert who really wished you wouldn't. So, but let me reassure you, you do not have to show this map to anybody else. It is yours and yours alone. You can show it to your neighbour. You can talk about what you've learnt. You may do with it as you wish, but I'm not going to expect you to do that. Right, before I give you the precious 10 minutes to just look back, are there any questions? Are you clear what you're trying to do? Yeah? Yeah? I'm getting some nods. Excellent. Right, I'm going to stop talking for at least 10 minutes and see how you get on. So, go. Enjoy. I can tell from the level of conversation that most of you have either finished or are not doing it at all. I'm hoping that the level of happy conversation suggests that you have gained something from that 10 minutes. I'm getting some nodding in the front row. Thank you. Because, of course, this is the point. It doesn't matter what your piece of paper looks like. It doesn't matter how your line grows. This is what we call a heuristic. It is a tool for thinking, a tool for helping you make conscious and explicit something that you may actually already know instinctively. But by making it explicit, making it conscious, you've got the opportunity to use it to answer the question, what next? To deal with what comes down the line. So I'm hoping that that has given you a taste for the idea of using strategy on yourself. So the set of models and the insights that you might get from them are all set out in this book. And round the corner, there is a copy of this book for each of you. And I'm extremely grateful to your colleagues for providing it. And I offer it to you in the hope that it is useful, not just once, but multiple times as you go through your life. Might I conclude with just one other thing? That was my first book. My second book came out in October 23. And actually is up for a business book award tomorrow evening. We shall see. It's been final. It's shortlisted. I wrote this with somebody else because I'm an extrovert and writing a book is very lonely. But let me suggest to you that one of the things your journey in the future might include is being on a board. Boards of organisations of all kinds need good people to serve on them. Charities, school governing bodies, the organisation you work for, private sector organisations, public bodies, trade bodies. They need good people to serve on a board. And we sometimes think that being on a board is something that requires really specialised skills, or it only happens to you when you're at a certain age. My colleague and I wrote this book to try to get across the idea that what really matters in a boardroom is conversation and how we talk to each other, and what we talk about is how governance or good governance gets done. So the book is called Board Talk, 18 Crucial Conversations That Count Inside and Outside the Boardroom. And my hope is that one day this book might be useful for you because you are serving on the board of an organisation at some stage in your journey. I have loved being with you. I really hope that this has been an enjoyable and helpful occasion, and I've really valued both your questions and your company. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathryn. That was really, really fascinating. Just before we move on, has anyone got any more questions for Kathryn following the discussions and mapping we've just done? I'm sure you'll be circulating around a little bit afterwards, so please ask Kathryn if you've got any questions. So thank you very much. I think Hayley's going to come back up in a little while just to go over some of the things that Kathryn's spoken about this evening, but I found that truly fascinating, and definitely there were some aha moments as you were talking, so thank you very much. I'd really like to pass over to Juliet, who I can see now, who's going to come up and talk to you all about something that's really exciting happening at 1. It's gone live today, and I won't take any of Juliet's thunder, but we're all really excited about it. So I'll hand over to Juliet to tell you more.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. Well, my head's still going from Kathryn. Thank you for that. And just to pick up on a couple of themes, I think the key thing for me was that real reflection on self-development. And often it's the thing we put last for ourselves as well. Busy lives, busy work, everything gets on top. So I think there's a real kind of thought about how do we think about our development and for the future. I think the other thing was about how do we think about navigating our careers as women as well. We go through different phases, we go through different stages, there's different pressures, there's different things on as well. So I think it is important to think about how we do that. And that self-awareness and taking ownership for our careers. So actually I love the thing about creating our own map, our own path. Because actually I've got a background in talent, and I think sometimes we kind of wait for someone to tap us on the shoulder or notice us, or we think we're on a succession plan and then suddenly we're not. But really owning our career and starting to advocate for that is going to be really important. So with that, it comes on really nicely to some of the themes to talk about. So let's just put these on. So I'm really excited to share with you the One Career Development Framework. So this is all about a new offering supporting women's development to thrive in utilities. And the first thing I want to introduce you to is One Drive. So it's a new self-development programme for women that are either stepping into management roles or within management roles. And it's all about confidence, capability, and helping women rise within utilities. So, what is One Drive? A couple of things to bring to attention. It is a skills development programme for women. It's been designed and developed by women in utilities, corporate backgrounds, and it's facilitated by good facilitators, coaches, and women who've got corporate experience as well. It's 6 virtual sessions, 3-hour sessions, so there's a lot packed into this, and I'll come on to some of the content of it. And it's a very, very competitive rate. One is a non-profit organisation, so everything that comes back in is reinvested into being able to offer more in terms of career development and helping women in the utility sector. I think the key thing about this and why I'm excited is it's not just a training programme or course. It's specifically focused on a good journey through some key skill modules to specifically help women. So it's been designed by women for women, and it picks up some of the themes about navigating women's careers, about self-confidence, and about how you can step up into those leadership roles. Firstly, thinking about yourself, but secondly, also thinking about you as a leader and how you can bring on the talent in the utilities industry. It's also a really safe space. So the programme is designed to be run in cohorts that you can come together with, work through. So you're going to also create a really fantastic network as you go through the programme and be able to share things you've tried out, explore, test things out, and actually work and share. So also it's going to network you for career opportunities in the future and build that as we go through the programme. The other thing we're going to bring into that is sector-relevant experience. So there'll be case studies, there'll be things to work about, there'll be experiences shared amongst utilities as well. So it gets you a broader network and a broader understanding of the whole industry as well. In terms of the programme and the 6 modules, the first module is Management Foundation. So that's all about setting the objectives and starting off. And it's all about thinking about that whole challenges of a woman at work and as you go through life stages and phases as well. So starting to think long term about how you navigate your career, but also how you create psychological safety and start to build that environment and set up for success and stepping into those management roles, or being able to enhance and elevate what you're currently doing as a manager of a team as well. Module 2 is Impactful Conversations. So this is about actually communication and coaching techniques to support growth, to start to engage with your audiences and have that influence and impact that you really want. Module 3, Speaking Up and Leaning In, one of my personal favourites. So this is about that, dealing with all those voices in your head, the imposter syndrome, developing confidence, backing yourself. If any of you were there and you saw the one session the other week as well. So building on some of those themes, but also developing a really strong sense of self-worth. If we're going to lead others, we need to be able to be strong within ourselves and have that self-awareness as well. So that's a key one. Then performance management. So a key role of leading and managing a team is to be able to be successful and drive the performance. So it is about having those conversations, feedback, performance conversations, but also empowering and helping others to grow and develop. Another key theme. And then we get on to navigating careers. So again, we've touched on that this afternoon, but how do you take control of your career? How do you help others as well? How do you navigate those stages? So when you do have a family and you're trying to juggle all of that and the mother load and everything else that comes with it, or when you're trying to navigate through different stages in later life, legacy, different things. So how do you manage that through your career? How do you set yourself up? And then the last one, it wouldn't be a leadership program, management program without a bit of commercial savviness. So how do you get yourself talking the language of business, the industry? How do you really influence and engage your stakeholders? And how do you really have that credibility as well as you start to rise and develop? So that's an overview of the kind of the 6 modules as well. Oh, I've gone too fast, too excited. So in terms of what's next, we are really proud, I think, to say for everyone in the One team that actually it's live, so registrations are there now. So if you are interested in that, talk to your organisations, think about yourself as well and putting yourself first. And the registration is now open and live, so you can find out any information. We'll be around, so anyone that's got a One badge or whatever, please come and talk to us as well if there's anything else you want to know about the programme. It is the first in the career development framework, and there is more to come, so it's quite exciting as well. A heads up, One Thrive is a bespoke leadership development programme that will be coming. That will be coming in October, some more information on that, ready to start for next year. And that is for women that are stepping into those senior roles or who are already in those and looking to really, again, excel how they have their influence and impact and confidence. So I guess a wrap with that is it's about developing and offering you a career development framework from the Women's Utility Network that is absolutely designed, delivered and specialised around you as women rising in your careers in the utility and helping others do the same. And I'm really excited about it. So that's it. That's all I'm going to say because I'm standing between you and networking. So, Hayley.
Thanks, Juliet. Really excited about that. Oh, yeah, no, that's going to be really complex now. Too many. Super excited about the opportunity to offer this development programme. I mean, just to go back 6 years, which was when One first started, and unless you've watched some of our podcasts or listened to it, I'm just going to give you a quick potted history. I was at a networking event not dissimilar to this, although it was kind of reverse. There were 60 men in the room and 3 women. So I think we have 1, 2. Maybe the others have left. But it was similar to this. And the other woman in the room, I actually went and spoke to, and we went to the drinks networking reception, and we had a bit of a, this is not very good, is it? It's like, and we vowed that night to do something about it. But 3 glasses of wine later, in a taxi home, promptly forgot about it. But bumped into each other again at an event 3 months later, and we pledged to do something. And that was when One was originally born, because we said we wanted to do something that would encourage women to join the utilities network, to stay and to thrive. And it's taken us a long time to get to this point where we can bring in talented trainers and coaches like Julia and Karen and some of the team here to be able to offer this to our team. But we're at that point now, so we are very, very excited about that. Too many things. But on today's main event, so I'm here to sort of wrap up and say thank you to Kathryn, and I'm just going to drop this because there's too many things in my hand. And I've got the book here. So there is a book for everybody. Please just take one book, just so everybody gets one. I'm sure you're with me it's not the first time I've heard it, obviously, and I came back as an alumni, so it's probably the 3rd time I've heard it, but it's still profound. It still makes you think about your career and your life. So please do these exercises. I honestly, it was huge and made a huge difference to me, and it will help you transform your career. So definitely do that. And you've obviously got this guidebook. But when Kathryn published this, I was asked to write something in it, and I think my bit still stands in terms of the story. So I'm just going to read it. Put my glasses on because I can't read. So Create Your Own Map is a companion-style book for women wanting to chart their career paths. That's we know. This is my vision of it when I read it. I can imagine in years to come, hundreds of women with tatty copies of these in their handbags everywhere. It's like a trusted friend with a worn copy that you will use repeatedly, refresh, remind, rediscover the fantastic tools that help them make their personal success story. So you're going to use it tomorrow. You're going to use it in 6 months' time. You might use it in 10 years' time. You're going to keep coming back and going, oh, God, yes, I need to do that again. So I relished revisiting it and rereading it, and I'm sure you will. And so please, we've got a QR code there if you'd like to give feedback, but what I would love to ask you to do is to give Kathryn a huge round of applause, and thank you for coming along this evening. Thank you. Now you have the opportunity to do a bit of networking, share some of your stories and connect with one another, because that is the beauty of the Women's Utilities Network. We are here to help you connect, find those like-minded people, find that next career opportunity and find those mentors, etc. So enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.